This is the second in a 5-part series called Outreach Jumpstart, talking about how we can think about and accomplish some significant outreach, evangelism in our community. Now, we started this series off talking about the mission of the church. If you haven't listened to that video, I would suggest you go back and set that framework. But now I want to move on to the second part, and that is how we accomplish our mission in today's society, in our context, for me at least, in the North American community. And one of the things I need to point out is an often discussed topic that we live in a new day. In fact, sociologists and historians talk about some ages that we lived in. The first of those ages would be the classical age. That started way back in the 4th and 5th century BC. Then we had a transition in the Renaissance and the Reformation into the Middle Ages. Then again, another age would be the modern age. And historians and sociologists often talk about the fact that we now live in the postmodern age. It's a different age. Now, you could talk some, and you could read up on this, about what brought this age on. Some would point out to the horrors of World War II, or the pervasiveness of TV and mass communication. But there were some events that took place in the 50s into the late 60s that really have changed our world significantly. Things like rock and roll, Bill Haley and the Comets in 1956, in 1957, the beginning of the space race. In the 1960s, birth control, which was available and effective. Then the beginning of the computer age, 1964, the first computer, and then the beginnings of the internet and how that has changed communication. One of the things that's very clear in this new age, however, is that the role of the church and faith is very different. I like to retell a story that Will Willimon tells, which I think just captures the sense of how this age is different. Will Willimon shares that in his small town, they used to have blue laws. You may not be familiar with blue laws, but it was rules that the local businesses wouldn't be open on Sunday in order to support the life of the church. And Will Willimon tells of how he one time was dropped off by his parents for church, and him and some of his friends went through the front doors of the church and went out the back door. And this was because their town had decided that the movie theater was allowed to be open. Now, what's really important about this is that this took place in 1963. He went to see a John Wayne movie. So this is not a recent change at all. And he lived in Greenville, South Carolina. So it was that long ago, in the buckle of the Bible Belt, that society stopped supporting and encouraging the life of the church, giving him the option to go to church with his friends for youth group or to go out to a movie. This is the world that we live in. We now see the results of this in an example that is often called the rise of the nuns. You may have heard this description. It is folks who describe themselves when they are interviewed about their religious background. And there's more and more people, as a percentage of our society, who will answer a survey like that with none. Not with Christian, not with Jewish, not with Muslim, but with no religious background. And as this chart describes, that percentage is going up based on age, which means that as our society continues to age, there will be more and more and more people who would say that they have no faith background. Now, our question is, what are we going to do about this? It does not mean the end of the Christian faith community, because the church has often existed in difficult times. People were becoming disciples and followers of Jesus when they were throwing Christians to the lions. People were becoming disciples in societies where it was illegal or is still illegal under communism. So we can still make disciples in our current society. But what it also means is that society will not support this in a way that it once did. We will have to engage in more thought and care and work in order to make disciples. We'll talk in our next session about a strategy to accomplish this. Take care, God bless, and if you're blessed by these thoughts, share it with another leader.